My name is Rob Guillory. I'm 31, and I am a comic book artist, also a colorist, kind of a writer also. Mostly, I just do all the art. Basically, my job is I get a finished script in an email from my writer, John Layman on Chew, or really whatever project I'm working on. I get the finished script in, I lay it out, I draw it, I pencil it, I ink it, then I scan it in and I color it in Photoshop. Then we send it off to the printers. It gets published as a finished comic. So that's the basic gist of what I do. I realized I wanted to be a comic book artist at a very young age. I mean, it was weird because I grew up with comics. I started reading comics when I was probably, 5 or 6. But apparently I used to draw when I was way younger than that. My mom has like drawings that I did when I was age like 2 or 3. But I didn't actually consider comics as a real job until I was in college by that time. I'm born and raised. I still live in Lafayette, Louisiana, which didn't have any kind of a comic scene at all. So I didn't even know comic books were like a real job. But it wasn't until I got to college and the internet was kind of around that I started thinking about doing that as a real job and started pursuing it. Well, like I said, I had no idea how I didn't even know comics were a real job, let alone like how you broke into comics. Thankfully, like I said, the internet was around. I started kind of researching it and kind of taking it seriously. I was already in college, so I started working on comic strips for my local paper, for the college paper. So that taught me like how to meet a deadline and that kind of thing. And as I was doing that, I started paying attention and researching comic book conventions, most of which took place in like Texas, California. There was nothing in Louisiana at the time, so we used to drive. We used to drive all over the place. We used to drive from Louisiana to Texas. We drove from Louisiana to Los Angeles a couple times. It was insane. But I started every 6 months. I would hit a different convention, and what I would do is I would create an entirely new portfolio every 6 months. So whenever I went to a comic convention, I'd meet and network with the editors, other artists, writers, whoever, and show them my work. Trade business cards, get tips, that kind of thing, and just built a network that way. And as I did that, I did that for a good probably 4 or 5 years, and then I started getting paying work, and then it just kind of led to where I am now. Really, a lot of comics is just like a lot of comics is really in how you conduct yourself. It does, obviously, if you have good work, that is awesome. You need good work to get work in this industry, but really a lot of it is, it's like any other job. If you're easy to deal with, and you're on time and you're timely and you're good at what you do, you will get more work. If you're hard to deal with, even if you're really good at what you do, you won't get work because people won't want to deal with you. And I've seen that happen quite a bit. Fortunately for me, I'm pretty laid back. I'm pretty easy to deal with, so I would get work just off of the strength of like past work. Like I would work with one person, and that person and me and that person got along really well. And after that gig was done, that person would refer me to another gig whenever that came their way. And it's like a snowball effect that just constantly happens. And that's really how a lot of the industry is run. Like I said, when I started getting paying work after a long period of taking free work, which is pretty much how, again, that's just how comics is. Usually, really in any creative field, you have to kind of prove yourself and pay your dues to begin with. So for the first, I don't even know how long, maybe 2 years, I did free work, and I think everyone does free work to begin with. Just drawing like little you know, 10 pages for free here, you know, 20 pages for free here, just here and there, kind of building a portfolio and building, you know, references and just experiences. And eventually that snowballed into a little bit of pay, not a whole lot of pay, not enough to like pay my bills, but enough to kind of like say, you know, I'm not working for free anymore. And eventually that kind of snowballed into more paying work, that kind of thing. It just keeps building momentum. But what happened with Chew, how I got together with Chew, that's really how I met John Layman, who's the writer of Chew. What happened was I worked on actually to backtrack, and this is actually kind of a cool side story, and just shows you how the comic industry works. This is back in 2006 or 2007. This is back when MySpace was around, and MySpace was actually like, Facebook wasn't big yet, it was all MySpace. This is before MySpace got weird. But what happened was I used to use MySpace as a portfolio, so I post my artwork on MySpace all the time. And one day out of the blue, I get this email from a guy named C.B. Cebulski, who I had no idea who he was, but he was really like complimenting my work and everything. And he asked me like, hey, you know, would you like to do this? I'm a writer. I have a six-page story. Would you like to draw it? I can't pay you for it. This kind of feeds into the whole you're gonna have to work for free for a little bit thing. But what happened was, C.B. Cebulski, I didn't know it at the time, but I googled him eventually, and he ended up being he's a talent scout for Marvel Comics, which I didn't know that. Like, he was a guy that basically, if you want to get work for Marvel Comics, you gotta talk to CB about it. Well, he found me at random on Facebook and liked my work. I ended up doing this 6-page thing for him for free, just kind of as a favor and kind of to build favor. And that ended up leading to him hooking me up with Tokyo Pop, which is, they're the big, like, they used to be the big manga publishers. They used to publish like the majority of the manga that was out there in America, which led to me working with a writer named Brandon Jerwa. Brandon Jerwa ended up being good friends with John Layman, who is my writer on Chew. So whenever John Layman came around and asked Brandon, hey, do you know any artists? I'm looking for an artist for Chew. Brandon referred me to him because we had worked. I worked so well with him on the Tokyo Pop gig that he referred me to John, which is totally how that happened. The premise for Chew is a really, really weird premise. The premise is that there's been a bird flu, a worldwide pandemic that's killed like 100 million people. And as a result, poultry has been prohibited. You can't eat chicken, you can't eat turkey, anything like that. Which sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of weird. Around the time the book came out, there started being these weird like food flu instances all over the world. Like I think Germany had one, Egypt had some stuff going on. Like all these little coincidences started happening. But in the book, the only way you can eat chicken or any poultry, period, is you have to go to a speakeasy. It's all prohibited. The FDA basically becomes like Homeland Security and is arresting people for eating chicken, which is completely ridiculous. But the main character of it is a guy named Tony Chu, who is a young FDA agent who happens to be a SIBOpath, which means that he's a food psychic. He gets psychic visions from whatever he eats. So if he eats an apple, he sees the entire life of the apple up to him actually eating it, which is way worse when you really think about the pesticides that go into it. Then you start thinking about what happens when he eats like a hamburger. If he eats a hamburger, he sees like the entire life of the cow up to its murder and like big processed and all that horrible stuff. So that's the basic premise of Chew. I have no idea. John Layman actually came up with the concept for Chew. He has no idea where he came up with the idea. He kind of just had all these really weird food ideas. He used to be a really kind of a fat guy, so everything was food related. And eventually one day he kind of thought like, well, wait a minute, like all these ideas are food related. I could put them together and make a really like cohesive comic idea. Like the entire structure of Chew is all about food. So yeah, he came up with the initial concept, the initial power. A lot of the initial powers were his, and actually, like, since we've been working together for 35 issues now. And as we've kind of gotten along and kind of built a relationship, I've started throwing in more like little stupid food powers. So you can start to see me kind of sneak in little ones here and there. The initial inspiration for Tony was an actor named Kenley Young. If you've seen the show Lost, he was the character Miles on Lost. He was the guy that could like talk to ghosts and all that. He was the initial inspiration for him because me and John were both big Lost fans, even though it ended really badly. We were both really big Lost fans, and actually a lot of the characters initially had some inspiration, like real life inspiration. Like Mason Savoy, who's the big fat guy, who's kind of the maybe villain of the entire book. He was inspired by Orson Welles. Kobe, who's Chu's partner, was inspired by Josh Holloway, who was Sawyer, also on Lost. So yeah, we have little things like that. Some of the characters are completely like just off the cuff. I do have like a list on the side of my drawing desk that is of some of my favorite actors and actresses, and basically it's kind of like a dream cast. Like if Chu ever became like a TV show or something, and I had my pick of like whoever I wanted to be in it, that's my list of like who I want in it. And I snuck in like Eddie Murphy has there's one of the characters in Chu who's got killed eventually. He was only in an issue, but he was a guy that could sculpt chocolate into real like usable weapons like guns and stuff, and I just thought like what the hell, like it could be kind of cool if like you know, he was Eddie Murphy for some reason. So yeah, that's a weird question. I mean, I've never been Asian, so I don't know how much of his personality is like influenced by him being Asian. I will say that John Layman he's married. He's a white guy, but he's married to an Asian woman, and his son is biracial, obviously. So I think a lot of his motivation for Tony being Asian was to create a character that his son could relate to growing up. So a lot of like, and I think a lot of it is actually also inspired by his, you know, his wife's family, which they are like the family. Tony's family in Chu is absolutely Kim's family, like his wife's family. It's pretty hilarious actually, and the more I've gotten to know them, the more I see it, and it's really pretty cool. But yeah, I that's a really weird question. So yeah, I have no idea. I don't know who my favorite character to draw in Chu is. I kind of like all of them. I mean, Polio is a lot of fun. Polio is a cybernetic, homicidal, cockfighting rooster who's a luchador. So he might be my favorite. He's a pretty big fan favorite. So he might be the favorite one just because whenever I get to draw him, there's kind of no rules that go with that. It tends to be just really ridiculous and whatever I can think of. So Polio might be the most fun. It's hard to say what's my favorite Easter egg in Chu. I've snuck in a lot of them. Initially, the Easter eggs were just kind of a fun little extra thing I would throw in, but at some point it became a really big part of the book. Like I think whenever I pull back, like sometimes I don't put that many Easter eggs in the book because I don't want it to take away. I don't want it to distract from the main story. So in more serious moments, you won't see me sneak an Easter egg in there. But in other times when it's silly, you know, when it's a good time to fit them in, I throw them in there all the time. I think I've had some good ones. I mean, I had one where I snuck in the cast of the show Fringe. Was in an issue just for a panel. What else? I've done some really silly stuff. I think one of my absolute favorites, which isn't actually like, it's not, I don't know if it's an Easter egg per se, because it's not pop culture-y, it's just silly. There's an issue, I think issue 34, where there's a wet floor sign on the floor, and it has a little drawing of a guy like slipping and falling, and the sign reads "Wet floor, prepare to die," which I thought was pretty funny. Like, it's completely silly and just really off the cuff, but for some reason, that's my absolute favorite Easter egg. My favorite superhero growing up when I was a kid, I created like a bunch of my own characters really early. Like, I started drawing, started making my own little mini comics when I was like in the 4th grade or something. But I had a character called Captain Brigade. That was my absolute favorite. I drew like 22 issues of the book between like age 9 and like age 11 maybe. It had no plot at all. Like, it was pretty much just like the first issue, I actually drew it on pink construction paper because that's all I had because I was 9. And but the first issue just starts with like a guy walking in the desert for no reason. You don't even know why he's in the desert. He's just walking around, and then you see this huge like the movie Tremors was really big at the time, which the kids may not remember the movie Tremors because that was like in the early 90s. But the movie Tremors was about these big earthworm monsters that were digging through the desert, and I was 9, so I was really impressionable. So I put like basically it was the worms from the movie Tremors. This guy's like walking in the desert, this worm like jumps out of nowhere and attacks him, and Captain Brigade, who's like the Superman kind of character, kind of like comes out of nowhere and they get into a fight. And that pretty much was every issue of Captain Brigade, who is my absolute favorite. I think my favorite gross moment in Chew, or at least the one moment we've done that completely grossed me out, because I usually don't like get sickened by my own stuff. But there's a scene in issue 3 where Tony's met the love of his life, and something happens. I don't want to spoil it, but he ends up getting puked on, which is pretty gross. But that's probably my favorite gross out moment. It's also the most gross thing ever, because I actually drew like it's a big panel, so I drew it, and there's like vomit coming off panel and like hitting Tony on the side of the head, and I drew like stuff in it. I got too detailed with it, which I do sometimes. Like, I drew like a Cheeto in the vomit, and like a little I don't know, it was bad. That was easily the grossest and my favorite moment from Chew so far. I don't believe in aliens, but I definitely like chicken. Yeah, like I'm a big chicken fan. I don't really know anybody that isn't a chicken fan. We have this spot I still live, like I said, in Lafayette, Louisiana. We have a spot called Fat Albert's. It's in the ghetto. Like, there's no dressing that up. It's in the bad part of town. So we don't go there at night, but every now and again we go there during the day, and like it's good stuff. It's absolute favorite chicken spot ever. So yeah, fried chicken's awesome. Aliens, they're not real, but chicken's great. I've actually never had any criticism for me being black and our main character not being black. I think a lot of that's probably because like most people probably don't even know that I am like African American drawing Chew. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never had to deal with that. I think I've never had to deal with any major like racism within the industry itself. I've had to deal with stuff outside of the industry, but never actually within it. Chew is really like, Chew's kind of the best of everything when it comes to diversity. Like, we have characters of every color, every race. It's all represented, and we don't make a big deal out of it. Like, it's just, you know, we have a guy named Paneer Sharma who has a turban. I mean, it's not a big deal. They're just people, and that's kind of how we present it in Chew. And I think people appreciate that we don't try to show off our diversity. We just kind of make a comic and make good characters that people would like regardless of what their color is. I honestly don't even know if it's important for kids to have a superhero to relate to or not, and I don't know if it matters like what color the superhero is and if they're the same color. I don't know. I grew up with, I was a big Superman, Batman fan, Spider-Man, all that stuff, and none of them were black. I don't know, but I also did grow up with like Luke Cage, who is black. I don't know. I think that the concepts behind the superheroes are what make them relatable and something to kind of like not aspire to, but something to respect. Regardless of what the color is. All these characters are all like ideals that I think I think kids can gravitate toward the ideal, the idea of like doing good, being good people, fighting crime and that kind of thing. I don't know if it matters. I guess people's opinions will vary depending on who they are. I think my favorite cartoon growing up, I'm a pretty big 80s kid. Like I was into like the Thundercats, Transformers, all the other ones, He-Man, all that stuff. It really, I think, had more to do with the toys than the cartoons. The cartoons didn't really hold up very well. But those are my favorite cartoons. Comics, like I said, I was big time like Marvel superhero guy. So like your Spider-Mans, your Luke Cage, Power Man, Iron Fist, Superman, Batman, all that stuff. Movies, I probably watched a bunch of like movies I didn't watch at that age. My favorite movie, which is not a good movie, it's a very stupid movie, is a movie called Commando. Arnold Schwarzenegger did it back. He did it in the early 80s. Alyssa Milano did it. She's really, really young. But it's freaking great. it's a horrible movie, but it's one of my absolute favorites. For the future of Chew, really, I'm just hoping that we can get to the end. We have a projected end. We're gonna go to 60 issues, and then we're gonna end it. So we have probably another 3 years left on it. My hope for it is just that we can kind of maintain the level of quality that we've had and keep pushing forward and make it better every issue. And I think so far it's been that. The idea was to just have a complete thing, 60 issues from beginning to end, same artist, same writer. It's a complete kind of epic story, and hopefully it sticks around for a while and people kind of enjoy it for years to come. We did have something in development at Showtime, a TV show. We had a live action TV show in development at Showtime for about 3 years. That did not work out. We actually had several scripts. We went through several writers. The thing is that Showtime optioned Chew whenever Chew was only up to about issue 6 or 7. So it hadn't gotten really weird yet. So they had no idea what they had bought. But they had already signed a contract, so they couldn't opt out of it. But I think at some point they actually like got the book and read all of it, and then realized like, wait a minute, like there's a cybernetic luchador chicken in this thing. Like, what are we gonna do with it? And I think they freaked out and they realized exactly how weird it was. So what happened was they started taking out like key elements of the story, which is just not what you do. Like they took out the bird flu aspect of it, which is it's the main point of the entire book is the bird flu prohibition. So they took that out and they focused on like the food, eating gross things, and it was not good. It was not good at all. Luckily, we got out of that deal. That deal was not. It's never going to get made through Showtime. We're actually no longer connected to Showtime at all anymore. But we do have some other leads. It looks like we're going to pursue. We're going to pursue animation, which actually works, I think, better for the property. Because a lot of Chew is really gross if you shoot it in live action. It's a book about a guy who eats really horrible things, and occasionally, you know, he bites a person, and that's pretty gross. It's actually not funny at all when you do that in real life, if you've ever tried it. But if you kind of animate it with like the silly art style like I've been doing, it lightens up the tone of it, and it makes those really gross, horrific things silly and funny. So we're proceeding with animation. We'll see when that happens. I can't really say, but we do have stuff in development with animation. My advice for anyone who's thinking about comics as a career is I think starting early is the best thing you can do. I started, like I said, I started my career very young. I mean, I've been drawing since, you know, since before I can remember. But I started professionally, like going to conventions and meeting and networking, all that kind of stuff, when I was, you know, 18 or 19. And I think that's a good idea, because I think, you know, if you train yourself to make those sacrifices, if you train yourself at a young age that, like, okay, I'm not gonna go to this movie. I'm gonna stay in the studio and work tonight and make those sacrifices and put the time in working, whether you're drawing or writing or whatever. If you train yourself to make those sacrifices, you know, at a younger age, it gets easier to make those sacrifices as you grow older. I think it's a very different thing. I think it's very difficult if you're, you know, in your mid-20s or in your 30s or even older, to kind of jump into that and start making those sacrifices and start making those life changes at a later age. It's just and I think it's more pressure that way. With me, I was 18 years old, 19 years old, still living at home with my parents. I had a job, but like I still was living under their roof and like bumming off of them. So that like helped immensely. So I think start young. You know, conduct yourself in a way that like you know, treat people like you want to be treated. I mean, like I said, like this industry is just like any other job. People hire people that they want to work with. And it is a lot about like the quality of your work, but it also has to do with the content of your character. People don't want to work with miserable people that never turn in anything on time, are always making excuses. No one wants to work with anyone like that. So really, that's it. Just go to conventions, come up with a plan. I think a lot of people that come into this industry fail because they don't come up with a realistic plan. You need to realize that like it's gonna be hard, and you're gonna have to like not make money for a while, and you may have to have like a set. You probably have to have a real job to like a side job as you're pursuing the comic thing. Like I did. Like whenever I got out of college, I went to work immediately. Like I had like a night job, like a real job. That had nothing to do with comics at all. And actually, I stepped away from comics for a good year and a half. I drew absolutely nothing. And then I jumped back into it, and then that's kind of when the Chew stuff happened. So I think just come up with a plan, how many conventions a year you're going to hit, where are you going to go? Like, come up with a plan, and I think you have to work your plan then. And I think that is... it's an underrated thing in the industry, because people look at comics or look at creative industries as just like, oh, it's touchy-feely, art's, you know, I create when I'm inspired. That's not how it is at all. Like, if I only created and only came to work when I feel inspired, I'd never come to work. I would stay home and play Xbox and sleep all day long. I come to work every day I work Monday through Friday. I have my own studio now. I work Monday through Friday. I get to work at 6:30. I leave at like 4:30 at night. So I work a good, 50-hour work week every week. Yeah, it's a real job. So if you're gonna do this, really do it, and good luck.